Hello guys, and welcome back to my video. So continuing with our job board mobile application, right, using Flutter and integrating our Node.js application. So in this video, what we are going to be doing is we are going to work on the main screen, right? So let me just pull out our emulator here. So you can see this is our main screen right here. So we have this bottom navigation bar that we are going to be working on, right? As you can see, this bottom navigation bar has the jobs, and then the applications, favorites, and then settings, right? So now let's go back to our application. So inside our features folder, right, let's create a folder called applications. So in this applications folder, let's create another folder called screen. And then inside this screen folder, let's create a file called application screen.dat. And then let's just create a stateless widget, right? Then this stateless widget is going to be an application screen. Okay, so now that we are done with this, now let's just close our applications folder, right? And then let's create another folder called favorites. Right, so inside our favorites folder, we also need another subfolder called screen, right? So inside this subfolder, let's create a file called favorite screen.dat. Let's make sure it's a stateless widget, and then let's set it to favorite screen. Okay, so now that we are done with this, let's create another folder again called settings. Okay, so inside the settings folder, let's create another subfolder called screen. And then let's create one called settings screen.dat. And it's going to be a stateless widget, right? Okay, so now that we are done with creating our screens, right, let's move inside our main screen folder, right? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we create an integer. So first thing we need to make sure that this is a stateful widget, right? So then we change it to main screen, right? And then here, the first thing that we need to do is we'll create a variable called selected index. And then we are going to set this variable to 0, right? And then we are going to create a method called onTap. On item tap, right? So what basically this method is going to do is it's going to just watch for when we click on an item on our bottom navigation bar, right? And then it's going to update it, right? And then we are going to set state, right? So we use the set state method to make sure that our selected index is equal to our index, right? So we have not used this method right here. Okay? And then we need to create a list of widgets, right? We need to create a list of widgets, which we are going to call pages, right? So this list of pages is going to take in all the pages that we are going to have on our bottom navigation bar. As you can see, we have this home screen, and then we have the application screen, the favorite screen, and then the settings screen, right? So now inside our features folder, we forgot to create the home screen. So I'm just going to call it the home. And then inside here, we're going to create another subfolder called screen. And then we'll create a file called home screen. And then we're just going to make sure that it's a stateless widget. And then we are just going to call it home screen. right there. And then here, what we are simply going to do is our first page is going to be the home screen. The second one is going to be the application screen. Then the third one is going to be the favorite screen. And then the fourth one is going to be our settings screen, right? So these are the pages that we have right there, right? And then what we are simply going to do here is we are simply going to return a scaffold widget, right? We are simply going to return a scaffold widget, and then this scaffold widget is going to have a bottom navigation bar. And then this bottom navigation bar is going to take in the bottom navigation bar widget, right? So here we need to make sure that we customize our bottom navigation bar. So we want to make sure that the background color is equal to color story, it's white, right? We want to make sure that the background color is white. And then the current index, right? So the current index is going to be the current index where our user searches. We are going to set it to selected index, right? The current index is going to be equal to the selected index. So let's just make sure this is a camel case, right? So the current index is going to make sure that is equal to our selected index. So we say that at first, initially, our selected index is going to be equal to 0. And then inside this on tab method, we are going to update our selected index to the index, right? So for example, on our bottom navigation bar here, this first item is going to be 0. This item is going to be 1. And then this one is going to be 2. And then this one is going to be 3, right? So the current index is going to be equal to the selected index, right? And then we want the selected color, right? So when the user selects an item, right, selected color, we want it to be equal to orange. And then the unselected color, we want it to be equal to black. Okay, right. And then now we want an on tap, right? So when a user taps on an item on tap, right, we want it to be equal to our on tap, right? And then now for the items, right, what we simply need for the item is going to take in the bottom navigation bar item widget, right? And then inside this bottom navigation bar item, right, it's going to take in a bottom navigation item. Bottom navigation bar item, right? Bottom navigation bar item. And then the icon is going to be equal to image.asset. So now what we are simply going to do is let's go to our Figma, right? So let's go to our Figma. Okay, so what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to copy several assets that I have, right? So basically now what we need to do is inside our project, right? Inside the root of our project, we need to create an assets folder. Inside our assets folder, we need to create a subfolder called images, right? And then, so inside these images, what we are simply going to do is I'm simply going to paste all the icons, right? So if you check, we have these icons right here, right? And then what I'm simply going to do is we need to go inside our pubspec.yaml file. So if we go inside pubspec.yaml file, if we go inside our pubspec.yaml file, right, under assets, we need to make sure that we update our assets, right? So we need to make sure that it's pointing to our assets folder and then our images folder, like this, right? So once you're done, just make sure that you click this download item to run Flutter pubget, right? Right. So now that we are done, let's go back to our let's go back to our main screen, right? So here, the icon is going to be under assets /, and then it's going to be home.png, assets, images, home.png. And then we need to set the height to 30 and then the width also to 30. And then we also need to set our label to jobs. Okay, now that we are done, let's just copy this bottom navigation bar item. Let's paste it below. So now I'm going to change this one to applications. And then we need to set this to suitcase.png. This suitcase item here. So you get this access folder inside the GitHub repository, right? So let's also paste this down below here. And then let's change it to favorites. And then let's set this to art.png. Art.png, which is right here. Art.png, right? And then let's paste this also below. And then let's change the label to settings. And then we'll also change the icon to settings.png. All right, so now that we are done, now we need to set our body, right? So the body is going to be our pages. Then for our pages, we are going to make sure that we set it to the selected index so that it will display the selected page, right? So now that we are done, let's run this on our emulator and then let's see the results. So as you can see, now we have this bottom navigation bar item, right? Application settings, and then our settings pane. So now that we are done with our main screen, in the next video, we are going to now start working on our, in the next video, we'll then start working on our home screen, right? So let me just pull out my Figma right here. So we start working on our home screen right here. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.